You with Youssef Al-Helu, who joins me here in the studio. A lot has been happening today. Just your thoughts as of the events that have transpired today.
Well, I think we might hear breaking news that Netanyahu or Smotrich or Ben Gvir, they had a heart attack or a stroke. Seeing these scenes, despite the warnings to the families of Palestinian prisoners not to celebrate, you cannot break the will of the Palestinian people. They have to understand this. I think Israel is in a very embarrassing situation. They have failed miserably to secure or to release their hostages by force. And they are not going to scare the Palestinian people. In Palestinian dictionary, resilience is our motto. And Palestinians, they never lose hope. That's why, despite the destruction in Gaza, we've seen today in Jabalia that was wiped out, thousands and thousands of Palestinians, they took to the streets and they were monitoring the handing over of those Israeli soldiers, captives. And this shows that whatever Israel does to Palestinians are not going to the museum. This is the whole point. And I would like also to stress that despite the fact that drums of wars stopped, the sound of cannons stopped, there is a parallel battle going on, a battle of values, a battle of a psychological warfare. Hamas is sending different messages today that, look, we are treating your captives in a good way, they are in good shape, they are smiling, whereas our Palestinian political prisoners,
they are released. Conference, is it?
This is the battle of narratives, a battle of narratives, a battle of values, a comparison. And the world judges what's going on.
Absolutely. The world judges. Let's talk about what happens next week, next Tuesday. Benjamin Netanyahu is at the White House. What's going through your mind? What do you think is going to be discussed? Mohammed just raised a few points there. This point about the transfer of Palestinians that we've been hearing to Egypt or to Jordan, annexation. What happens to the occupied West Bank? What happens to Gaza?
I think Trump
what are you thinking?
I think Trump is going to lecture Netanyahu. He's going to shush him and say, look, you have to respect this deal. This madness, this nonsense, childish behavior must stop. You have to abide by the rules and the conditions of this ceasefire. Otherwise, we are not going to see more hostages or captives released. I think Netanyahu is in a dilemma, in one sense that he is going to lose his government if Smotrich resigned. On the other hand, if he is going to resume the war on Gaza, he's going to anger the US administration, because one of the conditions of Smotrich to stay in power is to resume the genocidal war on Gaza as soon as the Israeli captives are released.
But it's happening in the occupied West Bank. I mean, they're attacking every single night.
This shows that they are annoyed from their failure.
And is that the new front, as Mohammed was saying? This is the new front. This is the new battle.
I think this is the next phase of Trump's, plan of the century to allow Israel to annex the West Bank. But we've heard some statements today from Saudi Arabia that they are not going to normalize ties with Israel as long as Palestinian lands are occupied. So,
will Saudi hold to that? So because, of course, just to clarify, of course, to our viewers, the normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia has been on the cards for a very long time. But Saudi Arabia has said it won't happen unless Palestinians have their own state.
Yes, and some other countries, they said that, we don't mind that Israel becomes part of the region if they just accept to live in coexistence with us, because Israel is like acts in an abnormal situation. It doesn't.
But will Saudi stick to this?
I think they have no choice otherwise, because they don't want also to embarrass themselves. Because remember, Saudi Arabia hosts Islam's first holiest site, and all eyes on Saudi Arabia. So if it does normalizes diplomatic relations with Israel before ending the occupation, it will be in a very bad situation. But overall, we are talking about releasing Israeli captives and releasing Palestinian political prisoners, and we should call them captives, because many of those Palestinian political prisoners, they were abducted from their houses.
This very point, administrative detention, a form of arbitrary detention, we were speaking about this now with Mariam Barghouti there in Ramallah. So many are kept there without trial for months, for years, and it can be renewed.
Yeah, there are something called military courts. And Israel is the only country on earth that, sentences Palestinian minors or civilians at military courts. So many violations of human rights. Can you imagine some political prisoners, they are sentenced several life sentences? Like, it's just nonsense. And Each time and then Israel carries out arrest campaigns at pre-dawn across the West Bank. It just wants to hold Palestinian captives in its position in order to put its conditions. Because, as I said again, the Palestinian political prisoners is a red line. It's one of the most important files whenever there is a final negotiations for a Palestinian state.
Now, just let's take a step back, Yusuf, and look at just the broader vision right now of where we are in this three-phase of the ceasefire deal. As Mohammed was saying, it's shaky, but it's holding. What's your assessment of where we are right now? And of course, what we're seeing today on our screens was an unscheduled part.
I think the world, Netanyahu, Trump, they cannot afford to see this war breaks again. It's not in the interest of anybody that this ceasefire collapses. It is a fragile, but it's still holding. Netanyahu is in a very bad position. The Israeli society is angry that what we were doing in Gaza for the past 15 months, we destroyed Gaza, and yet Palestinians came from under the rubble like the phoenix. They are supporting the resistance. Palestinians are defiant. Nothing will break their morale. And this occupation is the root cause of the problem. So this ceasefire is important in order to prove that Trump was the person who has the credit for the ceasefire. Also, the mediators are playing a major role in order to make sure it stays there. We hope it doesn't collapse. But again, I think it all depends on the intentions of Netanyahu. But as a matter of fact, the Israeli society, the families of Israeli captives in Gaza, they are pressuring Netanyahu to stick to the deal. They want to see all Israeli captives released because Israel has lied to the Israeli society. Netanyahu has lied to them. He said, by force, we're going to release them.
The point I just want to touch on, which is sort of hidden today, it's an important point, is the closure of UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. That's happening today. Talk to us about that and how it impacts the future of Palestinians in Gaza.
The scene that we've seen on the 27th of this month, a few days ago, when Palestinians returned to the north, masses, a tsunami of people. Some of those people, they said, we are going to march to Jerusalem one day. And this is annoying to Israel because it does know that Palestinians still hold to the right of return. As I myself, I'm a descendant of a refugee. I would like to go back to my ancestors' land, to my grandfather's town in historic Palestine, Israel. Why I'm not allowed to go there?
Which is the town?
It's called Kofacha. It's only a few kilometers to the north of Sderot settlement. I've traveled to so many countries around the world, and we are banned for life to go there. So this shows that Israel doesn't want Palestinians to hold to the right of return. Palestinians still hold the keys to their properties in occupied Palestine 75 years on. And UNRWA represents the right of return. So that's why Netanyahu, Israeli officials, army officials, they don't want UNRWA to stay because it represents the right of return.
And that's happening today.